The return of the Pink Panther wasn't just a quirky detective comedy. It was the resurrection of a dying franchise, pulled from the ashes with chaos, desperation, and strange choices that nearly derailed it all. Behind the slapstick gags and bumbling Inspector Clouseau, real-world tensions were boiling, bitter contract battles, botched stunts, and unexpected casting disasters. Today, we're revealing 20 weird facts about the return of the Pink Panther that you didn't know, from Peter Sellers' unpredictable behavior to near-catastrophic accidents on set. And stick around for the bonus fact, because it involves a behind-the-scenes twist so strange it almost kept the film from existing at all. Let's dive in. 1. The franchise was dead. Before this film, by the early 1970s, the Pink Panther franchise was considered finished. The last film, Inspector Clouseau, bombed, mainly because Peter Sellers refused to return and the studio replaced him with Alan Arkin. Critics panned it, audiences stayed away, and United Artists shelved any plans for a revival. But producer Walter Mirisch and director Blake Edwards weren't ready to let go. They saw Sellers as the only true Clouseau and fought to bring him back. Ironically, Sellers initially resisted, claiming he'd buried the character. It wasn't money that persuaded him, but his failing career. By 1975, Sellers was struggling with personal and professional setbacks, and returning as Clouseau became his chance at redemption. The resurrection worked. The film grossed more than $41 million worldwide, proving Clouseau still had bite. 2. Sellers nearly sabotaged. His own comeback. Peter Sellers' eccentricities didn't just play out on screen. On set, his unpredictable moods nearly sank the film before cameras even rolled. According to crew accounts, Sellers often refused to shoot scenes he disliked, insisting Blake Edwards rewrite entire sequences overnight. He also disappeared for days, citing health problems, only to later reappear and demand retakes of scenes already completed. Edwards, who had clashed with Sellers on earlier films, tolerated the chaos because he knew Sellers was the franchise's lifeline. Not X, but Y. It wasn't just comedic genius at work, it was sheer volatility. What audiences saw as effortless bumbling came from a man at war with himself and his director. Their fragile alliance teetered daily, yet the friction oddly produced the magic that revived Clouseau. 3. A stolen title saved the movie. Here's the twist. The return of the Pink Panther almost wasn't titled that at all. The studio initially wanted something generic, like Inspector Clouseau Strikes Again. Blake Edwards fought for the return branding, arguing it framed the film as a resurrection. But there was a problem. The rights to the Pink Panther name were tied up with previous producers. After heated negotiations, Edwards personally lobbied for the title, even threatening to walk if it wasn't secured. Eventually, the name was borrowed through backroom deals that still spark legal curiosity today. Without the title, the film might have been dismissed as just another mid-70s comedy. Instead, the promise of a grand return turned it into an event. The branding wasn't just marketing, it was survival. 4. Dangerous stunts. Hid serious risks. For all the slapstick humor, the stunts were anything but safe. Sellers, who was prone to heart problems, insisted on performing several pratfalls himself. In one sequence, Clouseau clumsily scales a window ledge and tumbles. What audiences didn't know is that Sellers actually slipped too hard, narrowly avoiding a real fall from a second-story set. The crew kept rolling, and Edwards loved the authenticity. But the incident rattled insurance representatives, who considered halting production. The physical comedy wasn't just funny, it was dangerous, sometimes life-threatening. In another gag with a collapsing chair, Sellers bruised his spine badly enough that filming paused for days. The laughter in theaters masked the brutal reality. Sellers' health was in constant jeopardy, and the film's gags nearly cost him dearly. 5. The Panther animation. Almost didn't happen. The famous animated Pink Panther opening credits, a staple of the franchise, were nearly scrapped. By 1975, De Petit Freleng Enterprises, the animation studio behind the Panther, was struggling financially. They considered abandoning the sequence to save money, replacing it with a static title card. Blake Edwards refused. He knew the animated credits weren't just decoration, they were branding, nostalgia, and charm all in one. The compromise? A stripped-down sequence done on a razor-thin budget. Animators worked unpaid overtime to finish it, treating it as a passion project. The result was iconic, fooling audiences into thinking nothing had changed. Not a luxury, but a necessity. The pink feline's playful dance across the screen cemented the film's identity. Without it, the return would have felt hollow. 6. Christopher Plummer replaced David Niven in Secret. David Niven had been the suave jewel thief Sir Charles Lytton in the original Pink Panther. Naturally, audiences expected him back in The Return of the Pink Panther. But Niven, dealing with health issues and other commitments, declined. The studio scrambled to find a replacement who could match his aristocratic charm. Enter Christopher Plummer. Known for The Sound of Music, Plummer took the role but under strange conditions. At first, producers tried to hide the recast by downplaying Sir Charles's importance in marketing. Fans were shocked when Niven wasn't there. Yet Plummer infused the character with a darker, more cunning edge that revitalized the role. It wasn't continuity, but reinvention. Ironically, many critics later argued that Plummer's take was sharper than Niven's, giving the film unexpected gravitas amid the slapstick chaos. 7. A real-life robbery inspired the script. The central plot, Clouseau chasing the stolen Pink Panther diamond, wasn't entirely fictional. In 1972, Europe was rocked by a real jewel heist at the Museo di Venezia, where priceless stones disappeared in a caper that baffled police. Blake Edwards, fascinated by the crime, wove elements of it into the script. The story of a thief who toys with law enforcement mirrored the actual heist's taunting notes left for investigators. What audiences didn't know, some of Clouseau's bumbling investigation tactics were spoofs of real police blunders reported in the press. It wasn't parody, but satire ripped from headlines. The diamond theft gave the script a sharper cultural edge, transforming what could have been cartoonish into something oddly grounded in reality. Comedy and crime collided in ways only Edwards could orchestrate. 8. Sellers' improvisations drove. Editor's Mad Peter, Sellers was infamous for improvising lines, sometimes ignoring the script entirely. During shooting, he would create long, meandering riffs as Clouseau, forcing co-stars to react in real time. While this gave the character spontaneous brilliance, it created nightmares in the editing room. Entire reels of film contained rambling takes with no clean exit points. Editors had to stitch together fragments from different days, often cutting mid-sentence to salvage continuity. The "Does your dog bite" scene, for example, took dozens of takes because Sellers kept adding absurd variations. It wasn't a controlled performance, it was chaos tamed in post-production, not polished scripting, but raw spontaneity. Ironically, the stitched-together performances gave Clouseau his jerky, unpredictable rhythm, which became iconic. The mess behind the scenes created comedy gold on screen. 9. Blake Edwards nearly quit mid-film. The tension between Blake Edwards and Peter Sellers boiled over multiple times. At one point, Edwards walked off set, threatening never to return. Their feud was legendary. Sellers accused Edwards of killing comedy with control, while Edwards complained Sellers was undirectable. In reality, the clash was less about ego and more about creative vision. Edwards wanted structured slapstick. Sellers wanted chaos. During one heated blow-up, Edwards told producers he'd quit unless Sellers reined himself in. Amazingly, the producers sided with Edwards, but they couldn't risk losing Sellers either. So they brokered peace by rearranging the schedule. Edwards shot other scenes while Sellers cooled down. Not unity, but uneasy truce. The result? A film born out of conflict, where every laugh carried the weight of barely suppressed fury. 10. The film's success shocked everyone. When The Return of the Pink Panther premiered in 1975, expectations were low. Critics assumed Sellers' comeback would flop, especially after years of public feuds and personal scandals. Instead, audiences flocked to theaters, and the film became a surprise box office juggernaut. In the U.S., it grossed more than $40 million, unheard of for a comedy sequel at the time. For United Artists, the film's success was a lifeline, reviving a franchise that had been dead for nearly a decade. Not just revival, but resurrection. And here's where I pause. We're only halfway through, and the behind-the-scenes drama is just getting stranger. So before we dive into the next 10 facts, go ahead and like and subscribe, because what's coming next is even wilder, from failed romances on set to secret rewrites nobody ever admitted to. 11. Sellers' health was a constant threat. Behind the laughter, Peter Sellers was a man in physical decline. By 1975, he had already suffered multiple heart attacks, and doctors warned him that strenuous activity could be fatal. Yet Sellers ignored their advice, throwing himself into pratfalls and high-energy scenes. During one sequence involving a chaotic chase, he collapsed between takes, clutching his chest. Crew members panicked, believing he was having another heart attack. Miraculously, he recovered, joking that Clouseau refused to die on duty. But it wasn't comedy. It was terrifying. Insurance agents debated shutting down production entirely. Not light-hearted performance, but a gamble with mortality. Every laugh in theaters came at the cost of a man pushing his body past its breaking point. Sellers' commitment bordered on self-destruction, and the production carried on, fearing the worst at any moment. 12. The script was rewritten in secret. The screenplay fans saw wasn't the one that began production. Early drafts of The Return of the Pink Panther leaned heavily on darker espionage elements, focusing on Sir Charles as the protagonist. United Artists hated it, insisting Clouseau remain front and center. Blake Edwards agreed publicly, but secretly hired writers to rewrite whole sections while shooting. Cast members often received brand new dialogue hours before filming. Christopher Plummer once complained, "I don't even know which movie I'm in anymore." What audiences didn't know, many of the funniest Clouseau bits were late insertions, written in hotel rooms after Edwards and Sellers brainstormed at night. Not polished planning, but improvisational chaos. The rewrites saved the movie's comedic edge, but they left a trail of discarded drafts that reveal just how close the film came to being a completely different story. 13. Sellers tried to replace his co-star. At the height of his erratic behavior, Peter Sellers reportedly demanded that Catherine Schell, who played Lady Lytton, be fired. He claimed she broke character by laughing during takes, but in truth, she often couldn't help it. Sellers' improvisations were so outrageous that Schell would burst into genuine laughter. Blake Edwards thought it added charm and realism, but Sellers saw it as unprofessional. At one point, he told producers she was ruining the movie. They refused, knowing Schell's reactions gave Clouseau's absurdity more weight. Not sabotage, but synergy. Her genuine cracks of laughter softened Sellers' sharp edges and made scenes feel spontaneous. Ironically, what Sellers despised became one of the film's hidden strengths, with audiences loving her playful responses. Instead of being replaced, Schell ended up immortalized as one of the most beloved foils in the franchise. 14. A lost scene featured an explosive gag. One of the film's strangest mysteries is a deleted sequence involving Clouseau and a malfunctioning car bomb. Shot on location in Nice, the gag had Clouseau unknowingly tamper with a vehicle meant for sabotage, accidentally defusing it through sheer incompetence. But during filming, the explosives rig misfired, causing an uncontrolled detonation that blew out several windows nearby. No one was seriously hurt, but the chaos spooked local authorities. The scene was immediately cut from the film, and footage was buried in the studio vaults. Rumors claim the reel still exists, but it has never surfaced in official releases. Not harmless slapstick, but a dangerous brush with disaster. The incident underscored how risky physical comedy could become when explosives entered the mix, and why some of the film's strangest gags remain hidden history. 15. Sellers was paid peanuts. Compared to the film's earnings. Despite being the face of the franchise, Peter Sellers didn't secure a huge payday for the return of the Pink Panther. At the time, his career slump left him with little bargaining power, so he accepted a flat fee reportedly under $1 million. When the film grossed more than 40 times that amount, Sellers was furious. He accused producers of exploiting him and vowed never to make another Panther film without a profit-sharing deal. Ironically, this financial slight fueled his difficult behavior during subsequent sequels, where he constantly clashed over salary and royalties. Not riches, but resentment. The man who made Clouseau immortal felt cheated by the very studio his performance saved. The payday was modest, but the bitterness it created echoed into every Pink Panther project that followed. 16. Catherine Schell couldn't stop laughing. On camera. One of the film's most endearing quirks came from Catherine Schell, who played Lady Lytton. Unlike most actors who kept a straight face while enduring Sellers' antics, Schell often broke into uncontrollable laughter during takes. Normally, this would ruin a scene, but Blake Edwards loved it. He believed her genuine laughter made Clouseau's absurdity more believable, as if even the characters couldn't deny how ridiculous he was. Sellers, however, was enraged, convinced she was undermining his timing. What audiences didn't realize, many of Schell's in-character smiles were actually her losing composure for real. Not bloopers, but blessings. Her authenticity gave the film a playful, natural edge. Instead of cutting those moments, Edwards leaned into them, proving that imperfection sometimes makes comedy sparkle brighter than precision ever could. 17. The budget was shockingly small. Despite being a big studio release, The Return of the Pink Panther was made on a surprisingly tight budget of around $5 million. For comparison, other mid-70s comedies cost nearly double. United Artists had little faith in the project and refused to invest heavily, assuming it would flop. Blake Edwards was forced to recycle sets, cut corners on wardrobe, and use fewer location shoots than planned. Even the Pink Panther diamond prop was reportedly just a glass replica borrowed from a jeweler's showcase. Not lavish spending, but creative stretching. Ironically, the low budget worked in the film's favor. It kept focus on the performances and slapstick rather than spectacle. The lean production turned into a box office triumph, delivering one of the highest returns on investment for United Artists that decade. 18. Sellers hated. Watching himself in the role. Peter Sellers may have been adored by audiences, but he had a deep dislike of seeing his own work, especially as Clouseau. After screenings, he would reportedly storm out, complaining that his performance was too broad or not funny enough. Sellers once told a friend, "Clouseau is a monster I can't control anymore." This self-loathing added to his volatile relationship with Blake Edwards, who constantly reassured him the character was gold, not pride, but torment. Sellers felt trapped in the very role that saved his career. The irony? Fans adored Clouseau more than ever, and the movie's success cemented Sellers' place in comedy history. Behind the laughs, though, was a man tormented by insecurity, fighting against the mask of a character he could never escape. 19. The film revived Blake Edwards' career. 2. It wasn't just Peter Sellers who needed redemption. Blake Edwards' career was also floundering in the early 1970s. After critical and commercial misfires, studios saw him as unreliable. The Return of the Pink Panther wasn't just a movie, it was Edwards' last shot at relevance. The gamble paid off spectacularly. Critics praised his precision timing, his blend of slapstick and sophistication, and his ability to wrangle Sellers' chaos into coherence. Suddenly, Edwards was back on Hollywood's A-list, leading to a wave of sequels and other high-profile projects. Not just a comeback for Clouseau, but for the director, too. Without this film's success, Edwards might have vanished into obscurity. Instead, he became synonymous with one of the most enduring comedy franchises of all time. 20. It sparked a whole new era of sequels. The success of The Return of the Pink Panther shocked United Artists into reviving the series full force. The studio immediately greenlit the IP Pink Panther Strikes Again and later Revenge of the Pink Panther. What started as a desperate gamble snowballed into a cultural phenomenon. By the late 1970s, Clouseau was a household name again, quoted in schoolyards, parodied on television, and endlessly imitated. Not the end, but a rebirth. The Return wasn't just a title, it was a prophecy. The film transformed from an uncertain comeback into a foundation stone for one of comedy's longest-running franchises. Every pratfall, every botched disguise, every laugh in theaters led directly back to the improbable, chaotic success of this single 1975 revival. Bonus fact: the film nearly vanished forever. Here's the kicker: the movie almost didn't survive past its initial release. During distribution, several reels of the negative went missing in transit between Europe and Hollywood. For weeks, the studio panicked, believing the original film elements were gone. Backup prints were rushed into circulation, but without the negatives, no future remasters would have been possible. Miraculously, the reels turned up months later in a mislabeled shipping container. The near loss meant The Return of the Pink Panther was only a shipping error away from being a forgotten relic. Not preservation, but pure luck kept Clouseau alive for future generations. Without that recovery, The Return might have been the franchise's final curtain. The Return of the Pink Panther wasn't just a revival of a comedy character. It was a story of desperation, conflict, accidents, and miracles that reshaped Hollywood comedy in the 1970s. From Sellers' fragile health to Shell's infectious laughter, from tiny budgets to near-catastrophic stunts, the film carried chaos in every frame. Yet out of that chaos came brilliance and a legacy that endures. If you loved uncovering these hidden stories, hit that like button, subscribe for more behind-the-scenes secrets, and remember, in Hollywood, the funniest films often hide the darkest truths.